Hello everyone! In this video I'm going to show you how to get around multi-factor authentication, also known as MFA or 2FA. As a quick reminder, MFA or 2FA is when you ask for an identification factor other than the password. You have your email and password, and you sometimes ask for a code either received by SMS or, as you can see in the screenshot, received on a third-party mobile application that allows you to have this code. I'm going to show you right now how this type of security application can be bypassed. So here we are on the victim's computer, receiving an email that appears to come from LinkedIn, inviting him to connect to Céline Prouvost, a human resources trainee. This profile doesn't exist. It's a scam email we've created, which we sometimes use in phishing tests. If we're careful, the sender is suspicious, since it's called invitation, and the domain name doesn't correspond to LinkedIn. Let's say the person doesn't pay attention to these two indicators and clicks on confirm that you know Céline anyway. This brings us to a page that appears to be the LinkedIn site with the identification to connect to Céline following the email received, except that if we pay attention to the domain name, we realize that we're not on LinkedIn, we're on another domain name, and so this too should tip us off. But once again, the site is well designed and people will be fooled by this type of email. So the person will log in using their LinkedIn credentials. After all, there's two-factor authentication installed on that account, so it shouldn't be too much of a hassle if we manage to recover their credentials, since the 2FA should do the job and should block us as attackers, as hackers, and prevent us from usurping the person's identity on LinkedIn. The person enters login password and clicks on identify. LinkedIn then asks for the code, which is the second identification factor. I have this code on my phone, and it's a one-time use code, and it will disappear in a few seconds. So I identify myself on LinkedIn, and I'm connected, apparently without any particular sign, except that I'm still on a domain that doesn't correspond to LinkedIn. But I'm connected to my account. So, as a victim, I may find it suspicious that I'm not connected to Céline Prouvost. But apart from that, I have no other indication that I've been compromised. And after all, even if my login and password have been intercepted, given that there's a one-time code, even if the code has been intercepted, there's little chance that anything can be done. But that's not the case, and let's take a look at what happens on the attacker's side. So, on the attacker's side, we have what's called a reverse proxy, which I'll come back to shortly. But basically all the information that was exchanged on what appeared to be LinkedIn was not LinkedIn and was intercepted. And so we can see in my window that I have certain information such as the username, the password, Mercy Arson, as well as information telling me that all the authorization tokens have been intercepted. So let's take a closer look at what's going on. When I look at the data I've intercepted, I have the username, which is the email I used to connect on LinkedIn, the password, Mercy Arson, and I have an interesting piece of information which is an identification cookie. And this identification cookie, the hacker can use to identify himself in my place. I'm going to open a private browser window on Chrome that is not identified on LinkedIn. So you can see that I'm not connected to LinkedIn since it's asking me to connect to enter my email address and password. I'm not going to worry about entering the email address and password I've collected. I'm going to go straight to injecting the cookie. And once that's done, all I have to do is reload the page to realize that I'm identified with the profile I've just corrupted. So as a hacker, I don't even need to have the app on my phone to log in and impersonate the victim's move. All this from a simple phishing email. So How does this attack work? Quite simply, the victim's computer goes through a link that isn't linked in, which is a server controlled by the attacker, and which is what we call a man in the middle, acting as an intermediary between the real site and the victim's computer. It intercepts everything that passes, everything that is transferred between the two sites, and from there intercepts the cookies. The cookie is a small file on the computer which explains that the person has identified himself and therefore has access to the platform. This cookie is then used to bypass the identification system, which is quite secure. In conclusion, multi-factor authentication, MFA or 2FA, does not replace awareness raising. You need to activate MFA whenever possible and set up multi-factor authentication security. This is best practice and something you need to do because it puts a spanner in the works for many attackers. Nevertheless, it's not a panacea, it's not an infallible solution. Just because you've got MFA in place doesn't mean you can ignore phishing attempts and all the problems associated with them, and that's why you also need to make users aware of the risk of phishing. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I look forward to seeing you soon for further demonstrations.